Welcome to Transatlantic Wrestling Talk. We are back after a little break. I'm your host, Andy. With me, other host, Dale. How we doing, my man?
What is up, my brother? I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Happy Sunday, my friend. And welcome into the Spring Stampede. We're going to crash into there in the Denver Coliseum, 1998. So, basically, this is something that you brought up to me because we haven't done a WCW pay-per-view in quite some time. So I figured why not? Because we were on the WrestleMania kick. So we might as well go for that crash course. Basically, 7,428 people involved in this. They're in the stands, though.
Yeah, but to be fair, it did look really packed in this stadium, which has not always been in this not a stadium. What you call it now?
Yeah, I would say a stadium or venue.
Venue, yeah. See, what do you call them over in the US? So in the UK, we have a stadium and an arena. So we have arenas anything under 20,000, and then stadiums.
Yeah, I would call this is a coliseum, but yeah, you could consider it an arena. And then you also have open air arenas, which there's no roof, or they retract the roof. But yeah, same thing. And I think WCW, one of the things that you and I never really talked about was they really knew how to block out certain parts to make things look bigger. But yet at the same time, to make it look more packed. And they didn't have to, because this isn't like the biggest of places for 7,500 people. But in the same aspect here, though, it definitely, you don't really have to hide too much of it. You know, you're just not shooting as high of shots. I think that they did a good job with it.
So we know what so let me just have a look here. So so realistically for hockey, which is what I always kind of base wrestling on, because don't forget you lose a lot for the stage and whatnot. It says here 8,140 is the capacity. So you know we're not far off, are we?
No, not at all. And that's good comparison because obviously the rink and the ring are similar.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the ground space goes, same thing with basketball too.
Yeah. I mean, I always think to myself, the rink, is probably bigger, but them squeezing that you'll get from the wrestling will probably be offset by the stage. So that's where I always kind of think it's probably a similar thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. But they block it out really well, and I think that also with the stage that we'll talk about later on, kind of helps aid what we're looking at here.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump straight into it, mate. You know, WCW was doing well, but and this was a really enjoyable one. Unlike some people who give us bad pay-per-views from WCW, this wasn't a bad one because I'm the nice guy, unlike you.
Yes, that's right. You have a tender, soft heart. This was still wrestling community service, but at the same time, enjoyable one. It wasn't like picking up trash known as double tables, but that's another story.
Or it wasn't like you with your double tables. Do you know what? I think we should have a vote here. Should we actually let Dale going forward actually pick anything? Because anything outside the WWE seems to be absolutely shocking. We had double tables. We've also had the lethal lottery. You know, you're not putting yourself in glory here, mate.
No, but let's just point out that Living Dangerously was also my pick too. So.
Yeah, fair dues.
Thank you. All right. But anyway, yes, correct. We're going to jump right into it. WCW, you were correct. They did have a very strong point here. But did they though?
Well, yes and no. So we'll go through this as we're going through the matches anyway. But one thing that I did want to say straight off the bat is already you can see the overloads of NWO, and it bores me. It really did start to annoy me after around about the first 20, 30, no, probably first hour. After the first hour, I was like, oh my God, how many times am I going to hear this NWO theme tune? How many NWO people am I going to see? Oh, this is doing my head in a little bit. They kind of lost, they were losing it here with the kind of faction, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. And even with the dissension that we'll discuss later on in the pay-per-view, you'll see that come to head-on collision at that point. I think I kept saying collision, crash course. There's a lot of C's here, but we don't have a C in this next match. In the first opening contest, Goldberg versus Saturn.
One of the longest Goldberg matches ever, wasn't it?
Rightfully so. Saturn made sure that he looked good along with Goldberg.
Yeah. Goldberg's never going to be he was never going to be a great wrestler, but it was a solid match, this one. also just a shout out to Perry Saturn as well, because when you go to the finish of this match, you know, Saturn goes to get the rings of Saturn, lifts him up, and Goldberg's trying to pick him. But it makes Goldberg look like he's the one with all the strength. But if you actually watch it, Saturn pulling his core up and straightening himself out, that actually gets him where he needs to be. Because Goldberg doesn't look like he can actually get in there. So big shout out to Perry Saturn for that.
It's a good point there. I mean, there's in WCW, there's two things going on with Goldberg, right? You had Regal showing people that Goldberg is not a good wrestler. Then you also have Saturn being like, I'm going to help this guy because this is my job. But man, I really had to help support this. Good finish here. The flock is still aligned with Saturn at this point in time. So this would actually lead to, for the next night, a United States or a television. It was United States Championship match, if I recall.
I mean, the one thing for me, which was good for this, is I was very dipping in and out of WCW around this time, just because at the time they'd actually moved from what is known as ITV and they went onto a channel called Bravo, and there was a little bit of a crossover where it all went kind of pear-shaped for them. So, you know, we weren't getting regular TV at this point in the UK. So, you know, it was a bit of a grey area for me in terms of thing, but that's why I love doing this, because we go back and we watch these things and we find little gems. But on to the next match, my favourite character on NWO Revenge, Ultimate Dragon.
He was excellent.
Versus Chavo Guerrero. And this is the first kind of Los Guerreros cheating stuff that we've seen, was getting the toe dipped in here, that WCW never really ran with, but was so successful years later, wasn't it?
Very good story being told here. Eddie is becoming a heel. We would see him at Halloween Havoc take on Ray about 6 months, 7 months prior to this in an iconic match. And Eddie is a full-fledged heel doing great work, telling his nephew, look, Chavo, you need a killer instinct here. You need to pull out all the stops. I don't care if you cheat. This is how you do it. Great story being told. Chavo is a very good actor here.
Yes.
Chavo is making sure that he still has that conscience. He doesn't want to win in a cheating way. Eddie is throwing tantrums and fits. Look, you got Ultimo Dragon, who, by the way, is no schlep in the ring, being put to the task with Chavo. Chavo should have had that killer instinct because it cost him a win here.
Where is this? But, you know, it was really, really good. And it was just this whole cheat to win stuff. And that was like, you know, even here, you can kind of see what Eddie's doing with it. And that just shows you that was the brilliance of Eddie Guerrero's mind, rather than something that WWE pushed in years after. This was something that was already there. It was just, obviously, he was given the time to do it over there. And he didn't really never get that time over here.
No. And then they'll be proven about the next night, or I think it was a week after, you and I were talking about it, where Eddie would cut that hellacious shoot work promo against Eric Bischoff. And if anybody remembers it, it was just basically saying, you were wasting me, and actually kind of pulled back the curtain, says, I love my nephew, Chavo. You got to do something for me, Eric. And there was an incident where Bischoff threw coffee at him accidentally on Eddie, but that's another story. Good tantrums here by Guerrero too during this match, and it just really getting pissed off at Chavo. Just a very solid match, and Ultimo was fantastic too.
Yeah, it really was. And also, just you know, it wasn't too long after this that Eddie, our next match, and some of the guys went over to WWE anyways, didn't they? Okay, so, you know, just a segue there. One of them guys was Chris Benoit, and he wrestles against Booker T for the WCW World Television Championship. This match was great. Really, really great match, as we come to expect. But also, Booker T showed some real skill in this match. And I don't think it was because Benoit made him look good. I think it was actually Booker T, chain wrestling, and some other bits and bobs. It's not something you really kind of associate with Booker T, is it?
Not at all. And when I think of Booker T, I think of some great wrestling moves. We don't think of chain wrestling. This was a best of 7 series capped off with this match. They telegraphed each other perfectly. Mike Tenay is fantastic during this match. Shivani was great during this match. Heenan was great during this match. But I bring out Tenay because Tenay is sharing with Shivani. Look, these guys know each other very well. They know how to counteract each other. They know how to wrestle each other. And it was so true. I look at Benoit as a whole nother level here, and he knows he's the best wrestler in the world. The announcers put him over as the best wrestler in the world. Why doesn't he have the belt? That's another story. But then I look at Booker T as a great wrestler and also a very underrated striker. He makes punches and slaps look convincing.
Yeah, even his kicks as well, really, really good, always good. And I tell you what, coming from somebody who's got a martial arts background, to throw them heel kicks and kind of pull back on them, mate, it's hard to do. Very hard to do because the momentum and everything that you've got and the way you go, and you don't have a lot of control over that. So the fact that he could do that, to me, is very impressive.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. You're right. I'm thinking of the physics of that. Then again, I didn't take any physics, so I'll let you explain to me. That's all right.
Definitely.
Great match, though. Great match.
So basically, just to give you a little thing, as you want to explain about how with a heel kick. So when you do a heel kick, it's all momentum. So the momentum takes you forwards, which then puts it through. The only kind of ground that you've got is basically a heel. Sorry, not the heel, the ball of your foot, which obviously spins around, can't watch. So the fact that he can whip that and then pull himself back, you've got to have very good core strength and hip strength to pull that back like that. So very, very impressive, to be fair.
He knew how to work it.
He did. But then we go into silly season. Unfortunately, Booker T retains that title. A little bit of messing around with the referee, which was unnecessary, but it got us there. And then, as I say, we just continue with the nonsense into this one. We got Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, defeated the British Bulldog. Rick Rude and Jim Neidhart were both handcuffed, and it was just, Dale, go away with it, mate. Go on.
I'm not going to take too long with it. I felt sorry for British Bulldog. Because you could tell he was hurting in this, even coming out there. It was nice to see him with Neidhart here. Screwy finish. I mean, you know what you're going to get with both these guys in the ring with each other. You're going to get a capable match. What you're not going to get is Vincent holding the keys to the handcuffs outside,
dressed as a policeman,
with the garlic stick club. There's one thing I did like about this is the sense of urgency after the match, because the bell was being rung as there was a complete beatdown of these guys that are handcuffed. That was it wasted for this match? Totally. But I like when there's like, hey, let's get everybody down here to help these guys out, because this is chaotic. This is a 3-on-2 beating and people are using weapons right here. Rick Rude is just the luckiest guy there because he's just cashing these checks. I'm not going to say for a couple of years because his untimely passing, but at the same time, he's just, I don't even remember what else he did here in his time as WCW this time around, I should say.
No, but yeah, it was what it was, and then it all burned down, and Neidhart and Bulldog walked out of there. Yeah. End of. Next match, really, really good match, which was really impressive. Chris Jericho round here was just awesome. He really, really was. And Vince's Prisakura, a good wrestler as well. Very, very well matched. Very good match in the end. What was your thoughts on this?
I enjoyed Prince Iakea. I thought he was something different. He was moving differently, very athletic looking, definitely babyface look. You look at that guy, you just can't picture a heel unless he turns into artist formerly known as Prince Iakea, which is hilarious. And wasn't his valet Charmel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But at this point in time, he's a babyface. He's going on against one of the best Jericho personas out there. Just how he hates Dean Malenko, and he's just completely a heel up. This is a good back and forth match.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just want to say though about the incidents with Jericho as well is like when he goes, "I just want you to want me." It's like, Jericho can absolutely kill a crowd off like he did there with just one little saying. And he was just so good at that, so good. He didn't have to go on. Like now, I think as he's got older, he probably goes a bit too much on with his promos. But back then, he could literally just generate everything with one little word or a couple of words. Do you know what I mean? One sentence.
One quote of Cheap Trick helped him out here. I like the finish, just how IK was constantly getting out of the Lion Tamer. I'm sorry, was Lion Tamer?
Yeah, Lion Tamer.
Lion Tamer. And he finally stepped on him. And after Jericho won, he starts crying and then puts on the robe underneath. Just great stuff. I question here, though, just a quick one. If Chris Jericho was acting the way he is now in AEW, in WWE, if he was still there, do you think the crowd would enjoy it?
No.
Do you think? Thank you.
No.
All right. Double standards exist constantly.
Well, they do, but then it's a different dynamic, isn't it? I think Jericho, if in WWE now, would be classed as a veteran who would be used sparingly, and you know, I'm not saying he wouldn't be in the championship picture or not, but he would be used very sparingly. Where I believe now in AEW, he's being relied upon too much.
If he called himself the Wizard in WWE, the AEW fans would want to fucking kill him. You know that too.
Well, don't forget, you know, Kevin Nash called himself the Wizard in WCW and he got away with it.
Oh, he was the Wizard of Oz. Remember that? He was the great and powerful Oz.
Yeah, the Wizard.
Let's take a look here. So the next match after that wonderful WCW Cruiserweight Championship match, we're going to go into Lex Luger. Lex Luger and Rick Steiner.
He was there. It was to get them on the card. It was what it was. There was no. The only thing I didn't really like is that there was no real interaction between Scott and Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a bit stupid.
Yeah,
because that was the story here. But it is what it is.
Were you wanting Luger there? Even as a kid,
No.
I don't really remember him. Yeah,
I think Lex Luger got to a point at some point in every wrestling company where he was just there. He wasn't really, you know, the problem with Lex is he had all the body in the world and aesthetically he looks really good. And then he opens his mouth, or he didn't open his mouth, and there was nothing there in terms of any. And that's the difference, you know, where people are saying he could have been the next Hogan and all this. No, he couldn't have, because no matter what you say, Hogan would take a microphone and people would listen. No one cares about Luger, which is the worst thing that can happen in wrestling. I mean, nowadays I hate him, but I hate him for other reasons. But back then it was like no one just didn't care, and that's suicide in wrestling.
And somebody brought this up to me, they said, "Well, you guys love Sid so much. Sid was a heel. Sid played his, and Sid could sit there and make himself be convincing."
Yeah.
So don't ever make that.
But the thing is, right? Hogan was a heel who'd go on about your vitamins, blah blah blah, right? But he was a face that done that, and he got you listening to him, right? Psycho Sid, mate, when he got on that microphone, you stopped and went, "Oh, what's he doing here?"
Yes,
he made you know what I mean. Do you ever remember Can you tell anybody or any of our viewers what the best promo of Lex Luger is to go back and watch?
Yeah, when he was laying down in the bed inside the Lex Express, saying how tired he was.
Yeah, there isn't one.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point, mate. There isn't one. And that's where the difference is. And that's my argument where, you know, in modern day, just to give you an example, for me, Oscar, great in-ring performer, got quite a good gimmick, but she can't talk. And that was why she never carries the belt well.
No. And I don't want to hear anybody sit there and tell us, "Oh, well, that's because she doesn't know the language." She does, but then get a translator.
She's waiting it, but she's waiting this company. Yeah, but she's waiting in the company for long enough now. If that was the case, then you know. I believe even if she did have a translator, I just don't think it's like it's all. I'm gonna do it, you know, bit of bushwhacker style, you know, where it works on a mid card, but it's not a champion.
Look, is it a bad thing to have a manager anymore? You know, look at Paul Heyman. We need more managers in this. We're on a totally different tangent here. Lex Luger sucks, but I don't want to hear anybody ever say compare Sid to Lex Luger.
No. Well, we'll move on to the next one, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, guys, because to be honest, we can talk about it all we want. But this match is, if you want to place a throwaway match in the middle of a card, that's very entertaining. This is how you do it.
Thank you.
Psychosis versus La Parka. Awesome match. The only reason we're not going to spend too much time on it, go watch it. It'll speak to you itself. We don't need to really say much about this.
These two came out, and I said, "Oh my god, like what's going on?" And La Parka is full fledged. Like, I know I'm the shit here. He knew it.
Yeah. But they just got the time to go out there, and sometimes we see throwaway matches on pay-per-views that are just build with not really much else going on, and the rubbish. This is how you do a match where it's entertaining without any build or anything like that, and it's just a good thing to watch. So
just under 7 minutes too.
Yeah. Right, okay, and then the next match we've got, obviously, we're in WCW territory, and WCW just love putting anything on a pole, didn't they, Dale?
Yes, including myself. I'm surprised if Dominic Mysterio was there, they would have put him on a pole too.
Yeah, that's the thing. We had Judy Bagwell at one point, didn't we?
We did. Rest in peace, Jude.
That's it. I've never been on a pole. I've been in a pole, but not on a pole.
Wait a minute. So as long as a pole hasn't been in you, then we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so speaking of, were you in Poland?
Yeah.
All right. Very good. We're going to keep it at that. So anyway, here is Hollywood Hogan and Kevin Nash against Roddy Piper and the Giant. What the hell did this come from?
Well, basically, I thought that, and then when I actually sat down and had another mull over it, as I do after the pay-per-view sometimes, I kind of thought, well, it makes sense because Piper and the Giants have both got common enemies in the NWO, so it writes itself, that, doesn't it, really?
True. And at that point, I was like, is this going to be another heel turn for the Giant? Because he was part of the Black and White for a while.
Yeah, he was. But this one was quite confusing, mate. It was an all-right match. It wasn't, something that you wouldn't expect from, Hogan, and Nash are not known for their in-ring prowess, are they? So it's never going to be awesome. And then you've got a really, Piper who's rusty and whatnot, hasn't been around for a long time. And then you've also got a very green Giant. So it was never going to, Jolly Green Giant. But it was never going to be, anything major in terms of win-win work. But the story was quite good, wasn't it?
Eat your vegetables, folks, because Roddy Piper is coming for you. At that point, I was still trying to familiarize myself with Piper at that time because I knew the history, I knew the legacy. I remember you and I watched The King of the Ring where Owen won last year, and the final match of that card was Lawler against Roddy Piper. And at this point, you only really knew Piper during our pay-per-views as a babyface, even the Royal Rumble 1992.
Yeah. I never forget Piper versus Bret at SummerSlam as well. It was a great match.
Yeah, and he was a babyface then. So there was only, there was only like one type of Piper that we knew during this WCW run. He would have been a great heel, but that never came to fruition. But at this point, this was mainly about Hogan and Nash having a dissension within the NWO, which would break off into the Wolfpack, which then I remember hearing Arn and Anderson even saying, like, what the hell was this?
Yeah.
And that's when I started losing my interest. Actually, at this point in time was when I was losing my interest in WCW because it just got too much.
Yeah, see, I was at this point where it was like too many NWOs, too many bits and bobs, and it's like, we're having this kind of Hogan Nash thing going on, but the NWO was that vast at this point. It was like nobody else was involved, and it was like, well, who's with who and what's doing what. There was too much going on here.
Yeah, and Bret Hart wasn't even on this card, was he?
No.
What a waste. This, when they bring him in to be a special referee, we've discussed that when we reviewed that Starrcade. It's kind of similar with what's going on in other corporations. Like, do you have any long-term plans for the guys that you're bringing in here? And it doesn't look like that. You can't do this fly by night. And at this point, Vince Russo isn't even in here too, because as much crap as we give Russo, or we could give Russo, he still had plans with some of these guys, and he still wanted everybody involved. In this case, it was just like, yes, that throwaway match we were talking about was great, because it was bringing people on the card. But what are you leaning towards at this point? Besides a separation.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. It was just thing, but anyway, Hogan and Nash win. After the match, Hogan, Nash goes as though he's going to powerbomb the Giant, and Hogan turns on him, hits him with the bat. Yeah, nobody from the NWO comes out and pleads the case or says anything. Just Hogan and the Disciple. Yeah,
Logic.
boring. Not really. Yeah. But then we move on. We got Raven versus Diamond Dallas Page. It's quite weird, this one.
No DQ.
Page comes out. He's the champion, but he doesn't have his belt. Raven comes out with the belt, who isn't the champion, and we're all over the place with that. But the story, with the kind of character Raven was, it makes sense, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then, it wasn't a too bad match. But again, we had a bit of a, people, the flock coming out and all, mumbo jumbo.
They almost bookend the run-ins with the flock. We didn't really touch upon it on the first match. Goldberg would have guys like Kidman come in to try and help out. And then I even think Ron Reese, too, to try and help out the flock against Goldberg. And he was just knocking them all down each time, which was nice. In this one, you still kind of had that going on again. It was a little too much of the run-ins. I think even the announcers at this point is like, here's another no DQ match, and then there's another one after this.
Yeah.
This is much. This is much.
Yeah, they were getting too much into the whole run-ins at this point, wasn't he, with everything?
We're not gospel, but I would love it if Tony Khan just watched one of our episodes and actually understood what fans of wrestling would think when you have too much of something.
Yeah,
and here, you have too many no DQ matches. You have too many freaking people on here, too. We're not concentrating on anything right now.
The thing is like, for instance, with the Hogan match, they've looked and gone, okay, we can probably squeeze this a bit further. Let's have Hogan and Nash go over, but with a bit of a stipulation here. We want to protect Sting, so let's have Randy Savage go over with the help of the. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just like, why? Just, there must be another way to get to where you need to be without doing this sort of thing all the time.
Egos, man, because nobody wants to be made weak by losing clean, if you ask me.
Yeah, and that was the problem in WCW. But anyway, as we said, Raven defeats Diamond Dallas Page, wins the United States Heavyweight Championship. Then we move on to our main event, Randy Macho Man Savage versus Sting for the World Heavyweight Championship in a no disqualification match. One thing I want to say is I did love the way that the NWO theme had the "ooh yeah" built into it. I did like that. I always liked that.
And he knew he was the shit too, because he was fucking awesome. And I was just so happy to see him coming out for a title match at this point in time.
Yeah.
I excuse my language here. Sorry, YouTube. But that's how much I love Savage. I think you know that. I think you understand that. He deserved more than just 40 days combined with the WCW title all throughout his career. Let's keep that in mind. Sting's momentum was absolutely killed with that Starrcade match. Yeah. Absolutely killed. Everything good that they planned. What now? Like, you got the big win at Starrcade. What's going to happen next?
I know. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That seems to be some of the booking in AEW and WWE, to be fair, in certain points where sometimes they book them, like Big E, for instance. Big E and Kofi Kingston are probably big examples of that. Booked them to win titles, and then it's like, what's next? And there was no what's next. And obviously, both of them had really bad runs because of it. And I think Sting's probably in that same boat at this time here.
It's a great point. When you listen to the people a lot, there's a reason why there's a brain trust behind creating this stuff. And I'm not saying the Daniel Bryan run from WrestleMania 30 was bad, because it was a pretty decent run, right? Yeah. But when he tried to insert himself in the main event of the WrestleMania against Roman Reigns and Edge, that killed everything. It killed everybody's momentum. It could have been a great match, but there was no reason for him to be in there. All right. And that's because the people want me. And this is the problem with these crybabies today. Like, all right, you want to be in? Earn it. Okay. Notice how the ranking system is gone, though, from AEW.
It needed to.
I was saying it was the stupidest thing here, but that's another.
The concept, given the concept would have been well, but I think they devised it from it too much where they could never rescue it back, so it had to go.
Yeah,
But anyway,
they realized that Punk was the reason why they had to get rid of that, because
mm,
it's like, well, take the strike while the iron's hot, right?
yeah, that's it. Well, Randy Savage defeats Sting here, no disqualification match. Kevin Nash comes out, helps him. Then Hogan comes out fuming. Really annoyed me this because it felt like it was Randy's moment, but he was just a side story to the actual Hogan versus Nash storyline or issue that was going on, and I didn't really like this. And as you say, I think Randy deserved more. The only thing I will say on this one is I'm just glad that he did get the title at some point, because no matter how many days he had it for, he was still a WWF, WCW champion.
Without
Which
a
for
doubt.
me, yeah.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I think that Macho Man always had to have the end of a pay-per-view ruined by Hogan.
Mm.
Was it World War III when Macho Man won, but nobody saw Hogan go over the ropes, or he went under and the ref didn't count him? And even at the end of the pay-per-view, Hogan had to grab a mic and said, "Just check the tapes, enjoy your reign." I mean, I'm wearing his shirt right now. And the reason why
Mm.
I love Hollywood Hogan is because when he got the mic, he spoke the truth.
Mm.
There was not one lie. As far as kayfabe goes, he was saying everything like, "I beat this guy, I beat that guy, I never beat a war. You know, I'll even beat Warriors." And then who comes out a couple weeks from now?
Mm-hmm. Oh
Mm,
God, him again
yeah.
with the most nonsense
So,
promo ever,
so
Mr. Warrior.
you know what? I'll have to send you something later on. But I think at this point, this is really when I started to see the cracks in WCW, and
Yeah,
I couldn't really. They were just taking on talent. And what does this remind you of, Andy?
I think AEW in sense, but I do think, given the due, I'm not going to sit here and slag Tony and the guys off too much, because I can see they're trying to get it in order. You know, people going on about what's his name,
Jay White.
Miro not being there, Jay White is coming in. Jay White's just coming in. Let him settle in. Don't just, the one thing, the worst thing you can do is, and I think Tony's learned this from the past, is which is why we're having the 4-pillar match in the Double or Nothing, which I'm very all for, by the way. I think it's really good to do. But Tony was going down the WCW phase where it's like, bring them in, give them a championship, bring them in, give them a championship. And that's never going to work. And I think the fact that he's doing it the right way now, and yeah, he's probably got people sitting off screen that are talented people, but you can't have everyone there. And it's like, as long as he keeps doing that and then maybe bringing some creative people in that, they'll do well.
Okay. Now, we got a little bit of time left there. All right. Now, we're talking about long-term booking wise and story wise and creating things. And we
Mm,
figured that Bischoff was just like, let me get this guy, insert him in a feud, and
mm,
let's insert him in a couple of pay-per-views long. All right,
mm,
which was the agenda there. That's what they had for Warrior. They were thinking about doing that. And it's out there and for the record that this is what the plans were. And they had an extensive contract, and he was just so overblown with his self-worth, and we knew that because that's how
mhm.
this man is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
With AEW, they just threw a year's worth of TV into one pay-per-view. You realize that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Why couldn't we just have Darby? Why couldn't we have a face-turned Sammy Guevara? Why
Hmm.
couldn't we have Jungle Boy? And
But
then
we,
all four of them together.
but the thing is, we can still have that separate now. There's still more stories to tell after that. Whichever way you do it, I still think there's stories there to do it.
Okay. How
You
about
know,
this?
I think you can do it that way, where you do the more singular and then go to the 4. But you can also have the 4, and then over the next year have the singular feuds.
But then he already says, I already beat you.
But did he though? Because the only one that he'll beat is the one that he pins.
Or it could be a way for him to lose the title after a year. Remember
Yeah.
that, because somebody doesn't have to pin him.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd rather. I think with me, me personally, unless you're going to give them a belt again within 6 months after them losing it, that's irrelevant to me. And that's where it annoys me with certain matches in this. Is like, you know, don't always need to protect your champion. If they're not going to get back round to that title within a certain amount of period, then don't worry about it.
Regardless, right now we're talking about Macho Man being a placeholder.
Yeah,
Isn't that
and that's
sad?
so sad. Yeah.
And that's I'm going to give this pay-per-view a 5 for that. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. You know what? I'll go with the 6 here because I think that there was still a lot of goodness to it. Like you were saying, Eddie Guerrero just being a show stealer, which is acting on the side was great. Chavo was great. Ultimo Dragon was great. The Psychosis La Parca throwaway match that technically shouldn't even be considered a throwaway match is fun. DDP, it's understated how over he was here too.
Yeah.
He was awesome. And I always feel like since this match of this night, he always had his ribs taped up. And Saturn looked really well too in this. So there is good on this pay-per-view. And Jericho.
There's a lot of positive. I'm going to go with a 7, mate, and the reason I'm going to go with a 7 is because WCW pay-per-views weren't always the best. This wasn't too bad for the WCW one. So if you actually look at it in the picture of where it was in WCW standings, it was a really good one. It wasn't the best, but it was good.
I agree. No, I think that's fair here.
Yeah. Right, guys. Well, that's us done and dusted. So please leave your comments and let us know what your ratings are for these. It'd be interesting to see where you stand with these type of pay-per-views and stuff like that. We are going to be back again next week. We'll be back with another banger. Dale, any ideas what you're going to go for?
I already picked it, my friend. And I thought about it because I actually was cleaning out my closet the other day. And I realized that there was a shirt that I bought about a year ago that we never touched upon. And we were laughing about it because of how this just was a random pay-per-view. And it was just so funny, the two people on it, because we're fans of them. We're going to go into May of, let me see.
So 96, was it? I think I know what paper. Just based on what you said about the t-shirt, I know exactly what one it is.
May of 1996. We're going to go to In Your House, Beware of Dog.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yes. One little interesting thing about this.
I was going to say, are we going to go for night 1 or night 2?
I think they're combined.
Oh yeah, well there we go. This is their thing. That was the first ever 2-night WWE event.
Yeah, unintentional too.
Yeah. But we'll get into that more when we're back next week, guys. But for now, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, thumbs up, all that good stuff. But from me and the big man, take care.